We can't head into winter without a proper celebration of the start of winter hiking. Get ready for the return of Full Conditions Winter Kickoff, presented by Bergen Outdoor and Reckless Brewing Company, happening Saturday, November 22nd at the Colonial Theater in Bethlehem. Each November, we celebrate the start of winter hiking with a full day of activities, all to raise money for local search and rescue teams through the New Hampshire Outdoor Council. On November 22nd, the day begins with a community hike to the summit of Mount Pemigewassa in Franconia Notch, where the Reckless crew will be waiting with hot chocolate, coffee, and snacks for fellow hikers. Later that evening, the Colonial Theater will host a ticketed event featuring an exclusive screening of 109 Degrees Below, a live episode of the Slasher podcast, a lineup of inspiring guest speakers, and cans of Full Conditions IPA, our special collaboration brew. So who are we going to have for speakers with Slasher at this event, Stomp?
We have a heck of a lineup. So when the pod takes the stage, we're going to be joined by Reckless Steve, of course. He's going to give us a great update on the latest craft brews and what's happening at Reckless. We're also going to be interviewing Paul Cormier, who is the current president of Mountain Rescue Services. And then to top off the evening, we're going to be talking to Joe Lentini and Ty Gagney on stage combined. So, Ty Gagney wrote the recent book, Lions of Winter. And Joe Lentini himself was a part of the Albert Dow event so many years ago. So it's going to be a really great night of education, talking about Full Conditions and what you can do to prepare, and so much other information. It's going to be a fantastic time.
Excellent. So if you want to go to this event, make sure you get tickets while they last. You can find them at eventbrite.com. You can search Reckless Full Conditions. There's also going to be a link with every episode that we're posting. And you can also find links in the Reckless bio, as well as Bergen Outdoors and Slasher. So we hope to see you there.
Yeah.
And it should be a great time.
Yeah, and remember, the Full Conditions event is a benefit for the New Hampshire Outdoor Council, which is an umbrella nonprofit in the state of New Hampshire that provides funding, grant monies to the volunteer search and rescue teams. So the night is a very important night for the teams.
Excellent.
See you there.
Broadcasting from the Woodpecker Studio in the great state of New Hampshire. Welcome to the Sounds Like a Search and Rescue podcasts. So You Wanna, a vignette series where we share post-hike reflections, challenges, lessons learned, and essential insights to prepare you for your next adventure in the White Mountains and beyond. So let's get started. Shall we?
Okay, Nick, so you want to hike some waterfalls in the White Mountains?
Sure, let's do it.
Excellent. So I'm Mike, and we're here with our co-host, Mr. Nick, young Nick. I think that's what I've dubbed you, right?
Yes, that's the ongoing moniker. I'm still trying to come up with a catchy one for you. I think I tried older Mike and seasoned Mike so far, and nothing's really stuck. Nothing jives. So keep working on it.
Okay, good luck. Well, all right, so we're going to talk about waterfalls in the White Mountains. So just to start off with, if you are looking to do like more research, what we did was, and actually Nick did the bulk of the work on this one, so thank you, Nick. But there's a couple of websites that we utilized, and also utilized the White Mountain Guide. Obviously, that has a lot of information in it, but there is a dedicated White Mountains waterfall page under visitwhitemountains.com. So that has a whole list of waterfalls. And then there is a newenglandwaterfalls.com website that has a full list of New Hampshire waterfalls. And then, Nick, I use the New Hampshire Family Hikes. So that's www.nhfamilyhikes. They have a good listing of waterfalls. And then the Slasher podcast, we actually did a dedicated episode on waterfalls on episode 8. So way back in episode 8.
Wow.
So yeah. So
back in the archives.
You go back in the archives, exactly. So I guess we're going to break this down into, what do we have? 3 major sections of waterfalls. We have waterfalls that are accessible along the side of the road or a very short walk. So these would be for anybody that's not like really into doing long hikes. Mm-hmm. Then we've got what we would say is moderate distance hikes. So these are usually like maybe a mile or less, or maybe a little over a mile in some cases. And then we've got the longer ones that are sort of deeper into the wilderness. So, Nick, I think want to start with the short sort of drive up list of waterfalls, and I can hand it over to you. And then if you're not familiar with some of these, then I can do my best to throw some information on.
Sure, yeah, I figured this was a good place to start. I did want to throw out, like you said, Mike, that White Mountains, like it's literally the Visit White Mountains page. I'm assuming the New Hampshire White Mountains tourism website had a good starting point. A lot of these waterfalls were on here. The New England Waterfalls website has a lot of hiking information for like the 48 or the 48 in winter. Maybe some of you have stumbled across sort of their stats. And they do have an actual book, but they had really good stats around sort of the height of the waterfalls and different fun facts. So it's kind of a mix of here, but I figured trying to divide these into these 3 categories hopefully made the most logical sense. And these are in absolutely no particular order. This is me pretty much looking at the pages and what I was thinking of at the same time. So hopefully that makes sense for people, and you can kind of look up ones if you think they sound interesting or if they're in an area you want to check out. So with that being said, our first on the list for sort of short walk or ones right by the road, Jackson Falls. So this is on Carter Notch Road in Jackson, New Hampshire. These are all in New Hampshire, so I don't know why I'm saying New Hampshire. It's redundant, but in Jackson, and that's about 100. It's 100 foot of sort of just stretch of sort of smaller cascades and plunges. Have you ever been to this one, Mike?
I have, yes. This was a favorite of ours when the kids were younger. So it's, I would say it's like, we're going to talk about Diana's Bath afterwards, but it's not as, I guess, swimmable as Diana's Bath, but similar in that it's got different, it's kind of, we're going to talk about Lower Falls as well. It's sort of one of those ones where you can climb up and down rocks and you can stick your feet in, or you can jump into a little pool. And we had a lot of good times when the kids were younger and we would go to Jackson Falls.
Cool. Yeah, I hadn't checked it out myself. I know Ash actually went there with Rylan when we were staying up there one time, but I had not seen it. So maybe more of like a swim vibe as opposed to a giant, big waterfall kind of deal.
Yes, it is. It's a great place to go swimming. And the only thing I will say is that it does run hot when the rain comes in. So you got to be careful with the little ones. But in general, it's a pretty good, solid, reliable like swimming hole that we used to go to when the kids were young.
Excellent. So next up, we have the Basin. So I think most people are probably familiar with the Basin, but if you're not, it's in Franconia Notch State Park, right off the Parkway on 93. And this is a small waterfall that's flowing into a 30-foot wide by 10-foot deep bowl, otherwise known as the Basin. So just a sort of geological feature over there. I don't know if the falls is probably like, or I guess where it pours in is maybe like, I don't know, 6 to 10 feet high, I'd guesstimate. Heavily photographed thing, pretty iconic New Hampshire landmark. Usually crowded, but also a nice place to just sort of hang out and have lunch.
Yeah, and I haven't really. I think I went here once or twice when I was with the kids, but my recollection is this is not a place where you can just jump in and swim. Am I right?
No. There are. So it's basically right along the Pemi, and the Pemi splits up kind of into a few different, sort of outlets over there. Coming down a profile lake. But yeah, like you wouldn't really go swimming in it. It's kind of like a tourist attraction, I'd sort of say. It has like wooden fence around where the pool is and stuff. If you wanted to get closer photos and you were so inclined, like I might have done upon occasion, you can hop the fence and try to get in front of it if you want to get closer to it. But yeah, it's definitely like your kids aren't going to go like hopping in there and swimming. There are some little areas near the Pemi that are sort of sandy that you might be able to wade into, but it's sort of another one too. Like, I guess it probably goes with saying with all of these is that just be careful for what time of year you're going. And if you do have kids with you and stuff, because these things can run hot depending what time of year and if it's after a rainstorm or whatever.
Yeah, we talk about water safety on the main Slasher podcast. So just keep an eye on the gauge and the river height flows, and that'll give you a pretty good sense on how fast things are running. But in general, if it's been raining for the last couple of days, if it's raining on Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and you're getting in on a weekend, expect that it's going to be, some of these places are going to be moving pretty quickly. So you got to use common sense.
Absolutely. Do you want to take this next one, Mike, since you're familiar with it?
Yes. So the next one here is it's called Lower Falls. So this is on the Kank Highway. So it's on the kind of the North Conway side near Albany Covered Bridge. So you go past a Conway Road, the Albany Covered Bridge Road, and then just keep heading up a little ways. And then what'll end up happening is you'll go around a curve as you get up to the Kank, and you'll see this sort of, it's a very cool, reminds me of kind of Planet of the Apes. It's like a kind of a curved cliff overlook. And then below the overlook is a section called Lower Falls, which has a pretty big parking lot, probably, I would say, enough for 100 cars there. And,
oh, wow.
Yeah, it's a nice pull off on the Kank, and typically on a summer day, you'll see that the parking lot gets pretty full. I don't believe that they allow people to park like on the side of the road on the Kank, but essentially it's just a series of pools and small cascades, very similar to what I talked about in Jackson Falls. So you get a lot of people swimming there. It's kind of a zoo, I'll be honest with you. My advice is that go late in the day or go early and then get out of there unless you want to deal with the crowd. But it's one of those places where people that don't know all the sort of nooks and crannies. Like if you're a Slasher listener, like you listen to us, we tell you about like the places that you can go where you're not going to deal with, you're not going to deal with crowds. Like this is like the tourist place where you're going to see a ton of people, and you're going to see things that frustrate you. You're going to see kids that are going to drop their food wrappers in the water, and you're going to see babies in diapers, and you're going to see parents not watching their kids. So it's a little bit of a zoo on a weekend afternoon, but it is a nice place. I mean, it's wide open, so you get the sun, and then it's nice cool water, and it's a beautiful place when there's not crowds there.
Cool. Very cool. Yeah, I feel like it's probably fair to mention the crowd factor on some of these. If it's like outstanding. All right. So next, these are two of my favorite ones. If you just want quick roadside pictures, and you can get up little herd paths to go a little bit higher on them. Just definitely be careful. But Flume Cascade and Silver Cascade. So these are basically off Route 302 in Crawford Notch. I'd say shortly, as you start to pass through that sort of chasm-y section as you're going past, if you're heading 302, heading, I guess, down towards Bartlett, and you pass the trailhead for Webster Jackson. Yes. Basically, right going down that downhill, they'll basically be on your left. They're on the western facing side of sort of Jackson, pouring down into Crawford Notch. Two really cool waterfalls, especially if it just rained. Those things are usually ripping because of all the rainfall coming off the mountains. Do be careful because you generally need to park on the other side of the road and cross, and you're crossing 302. So definitely take caution to try to get to see these. But basically, they're both right next to each other, and they both drop roughly 300 feet and 200 feet into basically down towards the road from the top of Jackson. So really impressive waterfalls. If you actually go a little bit further up in herd paths, I think you can get a much better view. I have not gone all the way up. I've explored a little bit with some of those. So super cool. And I did want to note that Silver Cascade is actually crossed further up on the Webster branch of the Jackson Webster Trail. So you kind of dip a little bit when that trail splits before you head up to Webster, and the first thing you cross is actually the very top of Silver Cascade, sort of in the woods. So 2 really impressive waterfalls, super easy to get to, right down in Crawford Notch. This one, and this is our final entry that we have for these roadside waterfalls, I'd never heard of. It's called Beaver Brook Falls. It's on Route 145 in Colebrook, so way up in the North Country, I suppose. And this is actually another wayside park. It sounded like, from the description, similar to probably like Jackson Falls or Lower Falls, where it's got sort of a parking area and maybe bathrooms and stuff. It is an 80-foot waterfall, so that's pretty neat. And I imagine being up in the North Country, maybe it's not as popular as some of these other ones further down, like off the Kank, but I've never been to it. So I don't know if you've ever heard of it, Mike, either.
I have not. Originally, when I read this, I thought that it was because if you go on the Beaverbrook Trail on Moosilauke, there is, on the side of the trail, there's a number of different, there's drainage, and there's a number of different waterfalls. I thought maybe it was this, but I'm sure there's a lot of beaver brooks in New Hampshire. So up in Colebrook, I've been up there, obviously, like that's where you go to do McGalloway and that area there, but I haven't, I didn't take a look at Beaverbrook Falls, but it looks nice. I'm looking at it online, and it's going to be on my lengthy list of places to check out.
Yeah, it looks pretty cool.
All right, so that's it for the drive up and enjoy the waterfall. So we had Jackson Falls, the Basin, Lower Falls, Flume Cascade, Silver Cascade, and then Beaverbrook Falls. So I'm sure there's more that are drive ups.
Oh yeah, 100%. I was gonna say that is we're sort of just calling out the ones I saw on lists and the ones that we know of. There's definitely more waterfalls in New Hampshire everywhere. It just goes without saying, whether you're hiking or even on the waysides, there's little ones all over the Whites and all over New Hampshire. So these are just sort of the ones that we thought as favorites and probably the most common ones to call out.
Right, yeah. And then, so that is the drive ups. Now we're going to the, what you're calling, Nick, as accessible via short hike, which means less than 2 miles round trip. And in a lot of cases, it's like less than a mile.
Yeah,
so,
for sure.
But you got to get out of your car and walk a little bit. Like you can't see them from the road. So there's 8 of these that we put together, Nick. So why don't you start with, this is probably, I would say, the most well-known waterfall in New Hampshire. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I would say it's for sure one of the most well-known. But yeah, we've got to kick things off, and this is also, I think, just one of the most spectacular waterfalls, really, in New Hampshire, to put it plainly, especially for how short of a walk it is. But Glen Ellis Falls, so right off Route 16 in Pinkham Notch, 64-foot waterfall, so pretty impressive. A lot of times raging after the snow melt, especially because it's near the presidentials and sort of right off the Wildcat Range. This is also the start of the Wildcat Ridge Trail, where that parking area is. And it's 0.4 miles to the base of the falls. And when I say the base, basically what you're looking at is you get there, you cross under a tunnel that goes under 16, and you'll keep following a side path, and eventually you get to some rock stairs, and that'll actually lead you to the bottom of the falls. And there's a couple different lookout platforms over there. And as I don't know when this is going to air, but as we previously found out on the episode before this, the Glen Ellis Falls parking area is actually open again, so you can actually park here and get to it pretty easily, and there should be plenty of parking.
Yes, and Nick, a little bit about the history of Glen Ellis Falls. So originally it was known as Pitcher Falls, which there's a number of Pitcher Falls in and around New Hampshire and in the Northeast itself. But it was in 1852. The falls were renamed Glen Ellis Falls by Henry Ripley, who is also commemorated in Ripley Falls in Crawford Notch, so we'll talk about him in a minute. But the name Glen Ellis combines Glen, which denotes a narrow valley. So it's Glen from a geographic perspective, and then Ellis, which is referencing the Ellis River over which the waterfall flows. So the Ellis River is a 16-mile-long tributary of the Saco River, and descends over Glen Ellis Falls. So that's the name origin.
Awesome. Thank you for that tidbit. That was super interesting. A lot of these things, I think there was maybe a few I noted names, but that's really cool. I did not know a Glen was a geological thing.
Yeah, it's like a narrow valley, I guess. So, but this is another place, like it's similar to Lower Falls, where it does get super crowded on weekends. So again, it's another one of those where it's late afternoon, early morning type of place that's good to go if you were looking to avoid the crowds. Maybe you want the crowd. Look, maybe you're looking to find a girlfriend or a boyfriend, and you run into them. There you are.
You meet at Glen Ellis Falls. That's super romantic.
Yeah, just bump into somebody and ask them out on a date or something. I don't know. Do people do that now, Nick? I don't know how that works.
I don't know. I'm afraid. I think I'd be afraid if I had to go date right now. The way the world, it gets tough. I feel like after a certain age. But but anywho,
two married guys. Yeah. So.
Yeah. We're not the people to look for advice in that realm these days. And I was going to say, speaking of crowds, like one time I hit Glen Ellis Falls and Ripley and a few others. And if you hit them on like a crappy October day when it's pouring rain or something, that is a lot of times one of the most spectacular times to visit any of these waterfalls. Obviously be safe with the running hot water, but if you're willing to go in the rain and put on a rain jacket and deal with being wet, a lot of these, that's the most spectacular time to see a lot of these things.
Right.
Do you want to take the next few, Mike?
Yeah. So Sabaday Falls is it's again, I seem to be getting all the Kangamangas highway waterfalls, which is great here. So Sabaday Falls it's a short out and back. I'm actually surprised that it's like 0.3 of a mile to get out there. It strikes me as being closer, but it's a little bit of a walk.
Yeah.
So it's off the Kank, and you get all on a parking lot. It's probably got about 50 spaces in the parking lot, and then you can walk out to it's 0.3 of a mile, and you get out there, and there's some wooden walkways that you can get up to that follow along to Sabaday Falls, and the main waterfall is like 35 feet high, which is a pretty impressive waterfall. It comes down into like a what do you call those? Like a pocket, and there's a pot at the bottom of it that's been worn away by the water. And then you can get into a couple of the pools down in the lower section. So it's got wooden walkways, but it's not restricted like you'll find in like the Flume Gorge or the basin. So you can poke around, do a little swimming.
Yeah, and speaking of, so also definite crowd factor if you hit this in the summer. When I was doing a Sandwich Range Traverse with our friend Paul back last summer, we ended here coming down Sabaday Brook Trail, I believe, coming off the Trias. And we actually saw a mother who was taking pictures of her, I'd guess like teenage son, and he was walking across the top of the falls, and like we were both like, we're just gonna leave because I don't want to watch this person like get hurt or something. But there were some shenanigans going on, and I think people don't understand how powerful those things are. Like if you drop 35 foot into a falls, but that was just a notable, we saw someone and we were like, this just seems bad. I think we're just going to keep walking down the trail and get back to our car.
Right. Yeah. Sabaday Falls is definitely like, if you've got a climber or young kids that like to run, it's one of those places where you do got to keep an eye on things because there's a lot of exploration that you can do up above the falls, and it's slippery and wet, and people that aren't used to that, they can get themselves in a bit of trouble. I've never really heard of anybody going over the falls, but anything's possible. So stay safe.
Yeah, for sure.
And then Nick, this next one here is called Crystal Cascades. So this is on Route 16 Pinkham Notch. So this is the launching point to get up to Tuckerman Ravine. So you get to Pinkham Notch. There's a nice AMC location there. You can get food, you can get hiking gear, you can get books, whatever you want, maps, etc. Good place to hang out and stop in. But if you're not looking to actually hike up to Tuckerman Ravine, what you can do if you want to just dip your feet into hiking a little bit is if you go up about 0.3 of a mile, you'll make your way up the Tuckerman Ravine Trail. You'll walk over a wooden footpath. And then as you start climbing on the trail for the first real climb, you'll get to a curve that has a set of stairs on it. And those stairs are where you can climb right up. And there's a wooden, or actually a brick wall that you can stand against, and you can look and you'll see a spectacular 100-foot waterfall, which is a section of the Cutler River that falls over the drainage there. So it's called Crystal Cascade, and that thing runs pretty much all year long. It very rarely does it get slowed.
Cool. Yeah, and not to be confused with the Crystal Cascade in 302. Yeah, I guess you just run out of names for waterfalls after a while.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, but this is a good one if you want to sort of, and it's a fun place to go. You can see all the hikers heading up to Tuckerman, and it's a good chance for you to get out there. I used to take my kids and my niece and nephews on this by myself. So I'd take like 6 kids and we'd go to Pinkham Notch. I'd get them some soda and food or whatever. They'd run around. And then even on the short hike out to the main waterfall, there's a bunch of different like side paths that you can go to just go check out the drainage. It's not great for swimming. I guess you can dip your toes in a little bit, but like it's not really great for swimming just because the water tends to move pretty quickly there.
I'd imagine it must be freezing cold, especially like where that is coming out of Tuckerman Ravine, like year round.
Oh yeah, but it's so nice if it's a hot day.
Oh yeah, get nice and refreshing at the start or the end of your hike as well.
Right. And then Nick, this next one here, I'm not familiar with, Thompson Falls.
Yeah, so I think this is probably the first one we've stumbled upon that neither of us have been to. I almost went to this with Paul and Mike Trokey a little while back, but we didn't hit it. But Thompson Falls, so this leads right from the Wildcat Ski Area parking lot. It's 1.1 miles out and back, and apparently it's a 30-foot waterfall. So it looks nice in the pictures. On my list to check out.
Definitely. Yeah, I'm just trying to pull up a picture here. I'm not familiar with it, but yeah, it looks good. This would be a perfect one for Stomp to weigh in on.
Yeah, exactly.
Excellent. All right, the next one is probably, along with Glen Ellis Falls, this may be like a North Conway thing, but Diana's Bath is well known and very famous in the North Conway region. So this is it's a 1 mile hike out and back to get to a series of pools and cascades. It's a total of about 80 feet of drop, but they're smaller plunges. So you've got like, I think about 10 or 12 feet is the most. So there's some slides there for the kids. There's some deep pockets that you can jump into. There's a ton of rocks where people can lay out and just relax. It's really a lovely place, and it's a decent hike in. So you don't get everybody, but it does tend to get pretty crowded there. And there is a challenge with the trailhead parking. So there's probably, I think, maybe about 50 or 70 spots for cars there, and then there's no option for parking on the side of the road, so you have to just kind of wait for someone to move. So I always recommend like get there super early or get there later in the day, or get somebody to drop you off. If somebody's going to like North Conway to go shopping, they can drop you off and you can walk in. But it is a little bit of a hike, but it's pretty flat, and the trail is pretty well groomed. It doesn't have like a lot of rocks and roots and things like that, so it's reasonably accessible.
Cool. And throwback to our So You Want It for the Moats, because you'd also hit this if you're actually starting up North Moat. Pretty much it hits that trailhead eventually, or you end up passing that on the way out or the way in. Right,
exactly. And you got to pack your patience with this. It's very much like Lower Falls. Like you're going to see people you're going to see kids dropping trash. You're going to see people taking risks. You're going to see a lot of just like sketchy stuff here with people that may not be as familiar with the outdoors as like a typical hiker that might listen to this show.
Which is good. We're not trying to discourage everybody, but I think we all know the vibe that we're sort of chatting about here.
Yeah, if you don't like if you don't like crowds and you want to avoid them, then I always tell people like go early or go late, or either that or just pack your patience. I actually didn't mind the crowds, because I would go when the kids were little, and we would go with my kids and my nieces and nephews, and we knew that it was going to be an absolute
you just kind of know what you're getting into.
It was kind of fun people watching too. Me and Kristen would just kind of be like, oh, look at those people. They're interesting. So
one thing I thought was funny with this too is I don't know whether it's Diana's Bath or Diana's Baths. So it was spelled in multiple. I didn't call that out in the notes, but it was spelled that different places. Like I'm not sure what the sign actually says, but I've always just called it Diana's Bath.
Yeah, I've always called it Diana's Bath too. I don't think that it's. I guess
I think it might have been the tourism website that said baths actually, so it got me second guessing whether I was good, but I don't know.
I know you got to wonder, like, is there some intern that's in charge with like updating the website that forgets, that doesn't know? I don't know.
Yeah.
So and then this next one, Nick, I'm not familiar. This is Avalanche Gorge in Franconia. Maybe I am familiar. Oh, this is the Flume Gorge.
So Avalanche Falls. This one tugs at my proverbial heartstrings. It's very nostalgic for me. I always used to go up to the Flume Gorge with my parents when I was young. I still visit there a lot. I love doing just that loop off season, I'd say more off season nowadays. I'd like not to have to pay to get in there. Even though they do lift up the boardwalk when you're off season. Right. But yeah, right off Route 3, sort of at the mouth of Franconia Notch. The Flume Gorge, it's actually a paid attraction. I did want to mention that. That being said, I think it's Memorial Day to maybe Columbus Day, and then they actually rip up part of the boardwalk that goes through the center of the gorge. But you can get in there outside of the sort of in-season time when they charge. So it's a really cool place to check out off-season. But anyways,
I don't think I knew, Nick, that I didn't know the formal name of Avalanche Fall. I always just call it the Flume Gorge. Yeah,
so that's the name of the top falls that you see there. There's also Liberty Falls, which is like further on in that loop that I didn't mention here. But yeah, Avalanche Falls is the star of the show. It's the waterfall at the very top of the Flume Gorge, so the very high end side of it. And it's part of a loop that's about 2 miles and 400 feet of elevation gain. It's a well-groomed trail. It's probably similar to like walking into Diana's Bath or something like that. Part of it is a boardwalk that goes through the flume itself, which is really cool. And it's about a 45-foot drop from basically the top of where the falls are to the lower end of the flume. And this falls sort of just shoots. It appears almost like it shoots out of the side of the gorge. It's pretty neat. It was created, I believe, by one of the last big slides that fell off Liberty, which is also kind of neat. The one that still dislodged that famed hanging boulder that they talk about everywhere in that attraction. And yeah, like I said, I hardly encourage, if you do check it out off season, they leave the boardwalk basically going up to the end of just where the falls is. So you can get pretty close to it, even if it's like in January, February. Just be careful and bring your spikes because obviously it's just icy because it's a waterfall and it's spraying water like all the time.
Right. So, and then the next one, we go to the Lost River Gorge. Have you been there to the Lost River Gorge?
When I was a kid. I've not been back since, and I did not know this waterfall was part of it either.
Yeah. It's been a while since I've been to Lost River. But,
another paid attraction. And I don't know if you can get in there off season or not, so I won't speak to that.
Yeah, I don't
Probably not.
So yeah, I don't think so. But Lost River. So Paradise Falls is it's about a mile walk in the Lost River Gorge, and it gets a 20-foot waterfall. So I definitely remember going here as a kid. I just don't remember all of the details. I think that this is the place that has like the lemon squeeze caves. Oh no, that's the Polar Caves. Actually, it's a little bit. I think this one does have a squeeze cave too.
So I was gonna say, like, my memory from going there as a kid, and I mean, granted, I was probably like 11 or 12 last time I went there, is that it was almost like a hybrid of like if you mix the Flume Gorge and like the Polar Caves together, it was kind of like a mix of both. Where it is obviously Lost River Gorge, but it's got caves and different things that you can go in, similar to the Polar Caves.
Yeah. I think they both actually have lemon squeezes in them.
Yeah. So if you have kids that like to climb in caves and stuff, probably a really good place to go in. You can check out a waterfall.
Perfect. I mean, I used to take my kids I would take them to the Flume Gorge, then I would take them to Lost River, and then we would go to the Polar Caves as well. Polar Caves is cool. It's very much like you're climbing into the cliffs that have the caves, which is fun. So
it is. We'll have to do like a stock New Hampshire tourism places. But I mean, I've been to the Polar Caves as an adult. I took Ash there because she had never been when we were like in our mid to late 20s. And I was like, you need to go if you've never been to the Polar Caves. We need to do this.
It's a fun place. And then last but not least and again, these are all relatively short. So you don't have to be like a crazy hiker. You can take like a family member that's not super fit or, into long walks. And you're talking like a mile and a half tops for most of these, even less than that for some of them. Yeah. So this is another one, Emerald Pool, which is up in the Evans Notch area up in, I think you go, it's basically right on the Maine New Hampshire border, and the Baldface Circle Trail is off of Route 113 as you go up into Evans Notch, and it's a pretty big trailhead. You can park on the road, and you got to cross the road. You head up to the Baldface Circle Trail, and it's just right across the street. And then from there, it's about a little over a half a mile walk to the Emerald Pool, which is it derives its name because of the green reflections of the water, which I think are come from the rock formations that the water goes to. I believe this is the Charles Brook that runs in through the Emerald Pool. And the Emerald Pool it's got a couple of different smaller waterfalls, so nothing large or spectacular. Really, Emerald Pool is well known for the swimming holes that are attached to it, but it does have a number of different plunges and cascades that you can check out when you're there. But it's a great swimming place. Another place that does get crowded on weekends. But it's kind of hit and miss. I've been there on like a Saturday afternoon. I've been walking out and I've seen no one. And then I've gone there like some days where there's like hundreds of people there.
Okay. Cool.
Excellent.
So that brings us to our last section, which is these are all generally waterfalls accessible by over 2 mile hikes. So two or more. So these are definitely more full out hikes to get to these things. Also substantial elevation gain, I'd say, for most of these that we have in this list. But we'll kick things off with essentially the Falling Waters Trail, or the low portion of it. But we've got Stairs, Swiftwater, and Cloudland Falls. So these are 3 waterfalls that are on the lower section of the Falling Waters Trail. Falling Waters, probably most commonly known as one of the routes to get up Franconia Ridge, either up or down. It's off I-93 right in Franconia Notch. And this is a series of waterfalls that tops out with the 80-foot Cloudland Falls on the popular route of Little Haystack. And to get to Cloudland Falls, it's 2.8 miles and 900 feet of gain round trip. And I'd say that 900 feet of gain, I kind of got looking at maps myself. The New Hampshire tourism website, I think, said it was like 600 vertical steps, which I'm like, it's definitely more than 600 feet to get up to Cloudland Falls. I think that's selling a little short. So just keep in mind, again, with a lot of these, like we're calling out the elevation gain because it's a hike, and that's a pretty steep section. And it's pretty wet and slippery going up Falling Waters Trail that way to Cloudland Falls. And kind of after you get up Cloudland Falls, unless you're comfortable sort of descending that slipperiness, just kind of keep in mind that you are pretty much en route for Little Haystack and heading for the ridge after that point. So I'd say once you get to that base, if you're just going to Cloudland Falls, like I would just stay at the bottom and kind of just turn around if you're like with family and friends who aren't really into doing something like the ridge.
Yeah, this place is infamous for search and rescue, slip and falls.
Yeah.
We get anywhere from like 20 to 30 of these per year on average. So there's a lot of activity here. So you definitely want to watch your footing when you go here. And after we record the show, there is a plan to reroute the Falling Waters Trail away from climbing up along the waterfalls, and it'll end up being it'll be basically like an offshoot trail of the main trail that's going to go deeper into the woods, and you'll be able to access the falls from there. But right now it crisscrosses the drainage, and you can see a number of different really cool waterfalls. Cloudland Falls is like the iconic photo opportunity for people.
Yeah, it's like an epic fantail waterfall, and I mean, I feel like you see that picture everywhere. Everybody loves Cloudland Falls, and for good reason.
Right, yeah. And it usually runs pretty good. I mean, it gets down to a trickle a bit during the summer, but for the most part, it runs pretty well.
Cool. So do you want to take this next one, Mike? Have you ever been here?
I do not, Nick. I do not, because I've never been.
Okay. All right, I'll take it. So this is on my list too, I guess now, but Nancy Cascades, another one off Crawford Notch. It seems like a lot of these are off 302 and Crawford Notch. It seems like that's your probably best bang for your buck if you just want to go to an area and hit a bunch of waterfalls. Head to Crawford Notch 302, and there's a bunch in that area. But yeah, 300-foot waterfall accessed by the Nancy Brook Trail. 4.9 miles and 1,500 feet of gain to get there round trip. So definitely a pretty good hike. This looks pretty spectacular from what I saw in pictures. Again, it's always tough to tell with waterfalls in pictures unless there's like a person standing in front of them how big they are. Kind of like even Arethusa, the first time I visited there, I was like, oh, this is much bigger than I thought, because it's hard to get that perspective sometimes, but it looks like it's a fairly impressive waterfall. And that's really, at that point, that's probably like a third of a day hike. You're kind of committing some time there. You're definitely not just getting off the road or like doing a loop at the Flume Gorge. It's definitely, I would say that's a full blown hike.
Yeah. And I think that it's on my list because I do want to go in this way to hike Mount Carrigain. And it's sort of like a trifecta of waterfalls. Like you said, on 302, you've got this waterfall here, Nancy Cascades, then you've got Arethusa Falls and then Ripley Falls, all right along the same section of 302. So you can kind of go up the road and hit all three of these if you want. So, but yeah, I haven't been here, but this is the way that so you can go Mount Carrigain the back way from Nancy Pond Trail or Nancy Brook Trail, and then hit Desolation and then go up that way. Okay,
cool.
And then the next two are, as I said,
you were just in this area too.
Yeah, I was just in here. So the next one we have on the list is Ripley Falls, which is I think like 2 trailheads up from the Nancy Brook trailhead, and on Route 302, and you start at the Ethan Pond Trail it's a 2-mile hike with a couple hundred feet of gain, and the waterfall is about 100 feet, so it's a little bit smaller than Arethusa Falls, and but the falls go down a pretty steep section, and it's not like they completely lose contact, so it's not like what you would consider traditional. It's more like like cliffs that the water's running down.
It looks like if it wasn't a cliff, like it'd be a really fun water slide to go down if you could do it safely.
Yeah, it's 60-degree angle. I don't think so though.
Yeah, no.
Right. So, and then the next one is Arethusa Falls, which is, it has its own dedicated trailhead, and it's connected with Frankenstein Cliff, which I just did like a full loop of Frankenstein Cliff and then Arethusa Falls. But you can do Arethusa Falls as an out and back. If you do choose to do that, it's about 3 miles total with about 1,000 feet of elevation gain. And this fall is pretty spectacular. It's a 160-foot drop waterfall that is I guess it's claimed to be the tallest in New England, accessible by trail. Mm-hmm. And I did look, there was like some bootleg trail off the side of it, Nick, that it looks like you can climb up the top. I didn't do that, but there's a lot of like swimming holes and stuff like that down the bottom that you can dip your feet in if you want to.
Yeah, so we checked this out. The only time I've been there was in winter with Ash, and I had Rylan on my back. So it was very family-friendly hike as far as how the trail conditions were. And it turns into basically a giant ice climbing spot when it's frozen over in the winter, which was really neat. We kind of were there and watched ice climbers. But I definitely could see, it's probably partially a climber's trail, but there's definitely a herd path going up. It looked like sort of the left side if you're staring at it, where you could get to the top of the falls if you were so inclined.
Yeah, no doubt. And I think overall, if you wanted to like spot a car or do a long out and back, you can string together Ripley Falls, Frankenstein Cliff, Arethusa Falls, and do like a big long loop hike in that section. And people are always going out to the 4,000 footers. I don't think that you go any higher than about 2,500 feet if you do this, but a lot of up and downs, a lot of awesome views, great scenery, and then multiple waterfalls to check out.
Very cool. And I had one little fun factoid for the name Arethusa, since I thought it was interesting. But basically, it's Greek mythology, and Arethusa was a nymph that turned into a fountain. And it was named by its discovery, Edward Tuckerman, in 1895, I'm assuming is Tuckerman of Tuckerman Ravine. And yeah, as Mike mentioned, you can make a nice big loop in that area with a bunch of waterfalls and views. So that's pretty cool.
Awesome. So we're gonna exit Route 302 and go up to Bridalveil Falls. Yeah, right. So I stop, and I think you have mentioned this, and I think Dave has mentioned this as well in the past. But I've never been to Bridalveil Falls. I don't think. So I'm relying on you, Nick, to give the breakdown here.
So Bridalveil Falls, off Route 116. So basically the road that runs on the western side, sort of the Kinsman Canyon Range, Franconia. You head up the Coppermine Trail, eventually splits off to Bridalveil Falls, about 5 miles and 1,000 feet of gain round trip. It's an 80-foot waterfall, really peaceful area, I think, if you wanted to camp out or something. And this one, I suspect, like, you're just not going to see a lot of crowds. I know I did it, like, kind of on a rainy day whim, and I didn't see anybody. It was like a cloudy fall day, and I didn't see anybody. So it's kind of a nice one to check out. I think it's not on a lot of people's radar. And most people don't go up really that side. It's kind of like we've been talking about the Mount Kinsman Trail recently, where it's just not as popular as going in from Franconia Notch if you want to get to that Kinsman Canyon area. And it does just end there. Like, you can't really branch off or up to anything. Like, it's its own little destination.
Okay. Yeah, I know that Stomp definitely gives a good thumbs up on this one here. So I'll have to get it on. I get it on my list, Nick.
Yeah, this is one of those ones that we'll have to get to sometime.
Yeah, and then Cascade Path. I'm not familiar with this one either.
All right, so this one I threw on here. I literally, again, don't know when we're going to drop this, but I actually did this after visiting Stomp in Woodpecker Studio North this weekend, and I've been up there a few times. But this one's in Waterville Valley. It's off Boulder Path Road. There's a little parking area for Snows Mountain over there. You can pretty much park there, and you'll notice there's a sign for Cascade Path. And it's a little awkward following kind of the beginning of it. You follow the path. It's obvious enough to follow, but it does go through sort of backyards of some new houses that are being developed. I should say they're very large houses, almost mansions kind of being developed over there. But it kind of goes through there. Eventually you break into the woods. And this trail is about 3 miles and 500 feet of gain out and back to go to the uppermost cascade. This one too is like, it's not like, I wouldn't say it's quite like a Diana's Baths or maybe like a Lower Falls or something like that. It does have some pretty big cascades. I'm just guesstimating since I wasn't able to find hard information, but I'd say like 15 to 50 feet. There's basically 4 big cascades that I've noticed hiking on it. I've done this loop probably like 3 times going up through Cascade Path and sort of down or over Snows Mountain. Really good photo opportunities if you're into photography and you want to get some shots of falls and not see a ton of people. I don't think I've ever really seen more than like 5 or 10 people hiking this loop before. I don't think it's super well known outside of Waterville Valley, and it is on their tourism website, so it's not like it's totally hidden, but just not as popular of a destination, I think, as you get further up into the Whites. But this is kind of one of my favorite spots to go and shoot waterfall photos lately. Wow. Was there with the spring melt, and it was pretty spectacular. And there are little herd paths to go to some of these spots. Like, just use caution. I feel like we sound redundant, but just be careful if you're going down. There's some slippery spots and some little ledges and stuff if you want to get good views of these things. So just be careful.
Nick, what do you recommend when it comes to photography for people to take those those really cool, I don't know what you call them, but they're like a sort of stop motion, it seems like you've got these photos where it seems like the water's like frozen but moving. I don't know how to describe it.
So you basically set a longer exposure. So you actually use like something like a neutral density filter, which is almost like sunglasses for your camera. You think of like the longer you have a shutter lens off, the brighter a photo is going to get, kind of in a nutshell. So, to get those types of photos, you pretty much take a slightly longer exposure. So maybe like around a second, as opposed to like, I don't know how fast a normal photo might fire, like an 80th of a second or something like that. So you're actually allowing more time, for the camera. I'm going to try to explain this in layman's terms, and also as someone that doesn't fully know what I'm talking about. But by allowing more exposure, you're actually allowing the camera to capture the motion of the water. So that's how you get that blurred water sort of effect. And you'll notice that like the background's still like the rock and stuff because that's not moving. Because the water is moving, it gets that sort of blurred, I guess, like glossy effect. And on the reverse side, if you took a really fast shutter speed photo, you'd get like almost like the droplets of the water like firing off and stuff. So it's kind of 2 sides of the coin, but in a nutshell, that's what I'm sticking to. It. People can call me out that are photographers and message us how to explain that more eloquently.
Yeah. So my takeaway from this is that like you need to be like a real professional photographer and dedicate some time to real.
You need a tripod too to do it. The other thing is that if it moves at all, your picture's pretty much boned. If it moves, it'll get blurred and not look good.
All right. So listeners, listen. Throw all that garbage that Nick just said away. Well, here's what you do. I do this. I use the slow motion video on my camera.
There you go.
And then that gets me like a cool type of vibe.
I think I have a couple slow motion videos I'm going to share on our page that I took because I was taking some video too, but that's definitely easier.
Yeah. If you have an iPhone, just do the slow motion and then it's artsy. You'll get there.
You do you.
Okay,
you do you.
Thank you.
But Cascade Path in Waterville Valley. Check it out.
Yeah, no, it sounds good. And then the next one here is, I'm quite familiar with this one. This is a good kid hike, matter of fact. Champney Falls and Pitcher Falls on, again, this is off of the Kancamaing. For some reason, I always get the Kankamangas ones, which is fine by me. I love the Kank.
You keep grabbing it for it. I didn't force that one on you.
I know. Well, you'll get the next one. So, but I've spent many times going up here with my wife and my kids, cool. And it's a great way to spend a summer day. But Champney Falls, Pitcher Falls, it's off of the Kank. Parking lot's probably got, again, 50 to 70 parking spaces there. You do have to do the $5 fee, or you got to get your sticker. And then it's about a 3-mile hike. And this is about 700 feet of elevation up and back. That's about right. You basically take this trail to get up to the backside of Chicora. From the north to get to Chicora.
That was another guesstimation of me looking at the topo map. So
yeah, that probably sounds about right. And it's a nice hike. The trail there, then that lower section's pretty wide, easy to navigate, and it's not super steep. It's more of a gradual climb, and then you go to, I think the first one you get to, so there's this gorge that you get to, which I don't know if that's officially Pitcher Falls. But there's this gorge that you go to that you can actually climb up and check out, and there's a lot of ice climbing that goes on in the winter. But then as you get up, the trail splits off, I think, left to the right. So you go to the left, and then there's a series of waterfalls. They're not huge. There's like 35 feet for Champney, and 15 feet for Champney and 35 feet for Pitcher Falls. And you can kind of jump across. It's a little bit like the kids and I used to climb around this thing quite a bit. So there's like little swimming holes that you can pop into, and then you can go across from one side to another. And then there is a view as you get to the top of one of the falls. I think it's probably Pitcher Falls. There's a view down into like the Boulder Loop area of the Kank, which is kind of cool. It's like a very narrow gorge. There. Yeah.
Okay. Neat. Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned too that, and this was another one. Like, forgive us if you called it something different, because the naming was also all over the place on this one. Like, some people call Champney Falls the big waterfall. That the one that's going in the gorge, I always thought was called Pitcher Falls, and Champney was the first one that you passed.
I've never known really. Yeah, I just always have called it Champney Falls, but I always was aware there was like a couple of different names for it.
I feel like there might even be a sign for it, but it's like, yeah, it's all in the same area. It's the same thing. But that gorge is super cool. Like, I went in there in the like early winter when I was doing a Chikura video in Middle Sister last year, and it was really neat in there. That whole little gorge with the waterfall falling. It's very, very cool.
Yeah, it's fun, and the nice thing about this one is that you do hike down into those falls, which is a nice feeling because you've climbed a little bit. And that was like when the kids, they would get happy when, all right, we get to climb down now, you guys, and they would always be like, oh, thank goodness. And then there's a bunch of rocks there that they could run around. I remember playing hide and seek with them, which is not a good thing to do when they're out in the trails in the middle of the woods, but the kids liked it.
That's awesome. Yeah. For whatever reason, that those geological formations just don't seem very prevalent in the White. So it just really struck me as like something you'd see in the Amazon or something. I don't know what I had in my head.
Yeah, it does have like a weird, or it's a little bit of a unique setup over there.
Yeah. All right, so next, I threw this on here just because it's a long stretch of waterfalls. There's a couple that are single big falls, but all the waterfalls, I just call them like Ammonoosuc Ravine Falls. But basically all the waterfalls going up the Ammonoosuc Ravine Trail, heading up to Mount Monroe and Lakes of the Clouds Hut. So this one's off Cog Base Road. You can go, technically the start of the Ammonoosuc Ravine Trail is actually off the Cog Base Road. I don't know how far it is from where the Cog parking area is, but there is a connector trail at the Cog if you want to pay and park there. It saves you some mileage. This is in Sergeant's Purchase, which I just thought was interesting to include because all those towns around there are all just like purchases, which I find neat. But yeah, so this is the Ammo Trail that goes up to Monroe and Lakes of the Clouds Hut. The falls start with a 35-foot drop cascade at the Gem Pool, which is about 1.3 miles and 800 feet of gain to get in here. If you've done the Ammonoosuc Trail before, Ammonoosuc Ravine Trail, this is where you cross sort of the pool and you start to head up. Like, it's basically where Ammo decides it's going to go straight up the ravine to Monroe, more or less, is kind of where these cascades start. And at some point further up, I'm not even sure the mileage myself, Mike, maybe you'll kind of harken back and be more familiar, but there's some point where there's a side path and it splits off to like 250-foot waterfalls that you can sort of see. I don't know if it's like 2,000 feet up. It could be 2,000. It could be near close to the Lakes of the Clouds. I'm not particularly sure of where it is. Those are the two big feature waterfalls I remember, is the one at the Gem Pool and then the one further up. But the whole thing is just cascades, and you cross over them several times going up the Ammo Ravine Trail.
Correct. Yeah. And I would say, if I were to guess, I would say that you get to that waterfall section. It's probably at like 3,200 feet of elevation, but there's a bunch of different, like, as you hike along the Ammonoosuc Ravine drainage there's a ton of different like little spots that you can check out. But the main one is probably, it looks to be about, there is like 2 miles in at 3,400 feet.
Because there's like a little arrow maybe up in a tree or something that points you over to like a viewpoint, I think.
Yeah. Correct.
At one point. So you got to kind of be on the lookout for it, but really pretty. And this one too, it's worth mentioning that if you make it a good way up that, like, you might as well just go to like Lakes of the Clouds and check that out, or maybe even hit Mount Monroe, because you've done probably the steepest part of the trail if you make it to the end of the Cascades going up Ammo.
Correct. Yeah. And there's a lot of like unnamed little falls and river sections there.
Yeah. So yeah, for sure.
All right. And then you're going to have to help me with this one, Harvard and Georgiana. Yep. This is another one you and Stomp seem to talk about a lot that I don't think I've been to.
Yeah, so Stomp actually recommended this one to me by name, and I kind of did some research and checked it out. But Harvard Georgiana Falls, some people also call it Upper and Lower Harvard Falls. So this is off Georgiana Falls Road in Lincoln. It's right off Route 3. To get to the top of Harvard Falls is probably about 2.5 miles and 800 feet. Again, this was me just sort of looking at a map. So Georgiana, the lower falls, is about 30 feet. And the top one, Harvard, is 60 feet. And it's a very spectacular waterfall. It's kind of cool because of how the trail is. This sounds kind of weird because we're talking about hiking in the woods and hiking New Hampshire. It's woodsy, but it's kind of grown in. And then you can hear it. And then at one point you sort of veer off and there's some ledges and you can see this giant cascade kind of pouring down through the forest. It's really neat. I did want to call out as well that after you get above Georgiana Falls, so the first waterfall you come to, the path does get rougher. It's sort of blazed, but you really got to sort of pay attention to your footing and where you're going as you go further up. It's not sketchy by any means, but just pay attention. And if you do go up past all the way to the top of Harvard Falls, there is actually a bench up there, and you can sort of see out to I think it looks out to sort of Loon, Lincoln. There's one outlook that looks out to Loon. There's another that looks out to Franconia Notch. And Stomp told me about the bench. I did not find it the first time I was up there. I found it the second time. It may be gone by now. Who knows? But at the top, there was a bench. And there's also another pretty big cascade off the top of Harvard Falls with this really cool pool on a rock you can kind of sit out on. So similar to more I'd say Amanusa Ravine, maybe not as big, but in the terms of you can just explore, and there's definitely lots of ledges and stuff, and you're definitely off the beaten path here. As far as just be careful where you're going. There's definitely ledges where you could slip with pretty big drops into this sort of ravine that's sort of pouring off the side of the mountain. But very cool. It's one of my favorite places to check out after a rainstorm. I think since Tom told me about it, I've probably been there 4-ish times now, 4 or 5 times. And brought a few different people. So definitely one to check out. And I also think just not on a lot of people's radar, unless you sort of live in that area and you've heard of it.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with it, but I will check it out. I think it's sort of in that same vicinity as Mount Pamago. So it's exit 33.
Yeah, it's there's a roadway in over there and a couple different hotels, the Pemmy Cabins. It's sort of in that little area off Route 3.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very good. And then this next one here. So I've been in this general vicinity. So this is Fletcher's Cascade in Waterville Valley. So this is Drake's Brook and Mount Noon and that Sandwich Mountain area. But I can't remember. I did this hike with Stomp and our friend Jimmy, and I don't recall us going over to Fletcher's Cascade. I think we bypassed it at that time. So I've never been on it.
Okay. Yeah, I have not checked out this one either.
Yeah, but this is, I think if you're going to be in that general vicinity of Drake's Brook or Fletcher Cascade Trail, they're actually very parallel trails where it looks like you can just sort of cut across you can bushwhack across a drainage and get to it from Drake's Brook Trail. I don't know how difficult it is, but it doesn't look very far. But Stomp has definitely talked about it before, so I think if you're in that Algonquin, Sandwich, Jennings, Noon, Peak area, it's over in that vicinity off of Route 49. Same area as Welsh Dickey as well.
Yep. Yeah, and shout out to our friend Mike Trokey, who actually is the maintainer for Drake's Brook, and he's tried to swindle me into going here and bring in some maintenance tools, which I haven't done yet, but I definitely need to go check out that waterfall.
Well, Mike, I stubbed my toe on Drake's Brook, so I have a bone to pick with you.
Gotta contact the maintainer there with that issue.
Yes. So I'd like to speak to the manager, please. So this next one here, Nick, is and these are the types of things I do. So we're going to close. We got a couple more we want to recommend, but for people that are out there and they're doing a lot of hiking, I recommend when you're going up, and we're going to talk about the Appalachia waterfalls off of Route 2 in the Appalachia parking lot. There's a bunch of these places, I think 19 Mile is another one, but there are trails that parallel drainage where there's a ton of different little swimming holes and waterfalls that you can just check out, and Appalachia is certainly one of them, Nick.
Yeah, 100%. We're calling out some of these and even doing some research on the waterfalls of Appalachia. I stumbled upon an article that said there's literally hundreds of named and unnamed waterfalls within just the northern side of Adams and Madison and Jefferson, all just so many drainages like Mike mentioned. Use caution when exploring, but you might really find some stuff out in the woods that people don't know about and find a waterfall to yourself. But the waterfall is off the Appalachia trailhead. So Appalachia, most people know for doing Adams or Madison. It's off Route 2 in Randolph, one of the bigger trailheads, and certainly the main gateway to access the Northern Presidentials. So on this one, there's multiple waterfalls on and off the trails. And when I say trails, I just mean the direct like named trails like Valleyway or Brookside or things like that. These are all on the northern sides of Adams Madison and pretty much the drainages. So the ones that I did want to call out were Garden Falls. And this is actually, if you're looking on a map, looking basically north to south as you ascend the trail. Gordon Falls, Sal Rock Falls, Lower Sal Rock Falls, Tama Falls. These are all off Falls Way, which more or less splits off the bottom section of Valley Way. You can actually use this as sort of an option if you want to go up or down and do something different than doing Valley Way. You can take Falls Way and view some waterfalls on your way up or down, maybe Madison or Adams. Salamakis Falls is on Brookside, kind of in that same area. And then one of my favorites that I've seen in there, Duck Falls, is right where Watson Path diverges off from Brookside. Watson Path, a really good alternative going up Madison. Great views if you want to do something different other than Valleyway or Airline. You have a really nice weather day. I'd say probably like a 20-30 foot cascade before it actually starts to get steep. And these are actually all basically from the Snyder Brook drainage coming off Madison. And as we called out, like, and even as Mike mentioned, like if you get into like even the King Ravine area or stuff, there's cascades and little pools and stuff everywhere, like literally in there. So these are not the only ones. I think if you just want to kind of go up and like hit, say, Duck Falls or like maybe explore some of these other smaller falls, like right along Falls Way, it's not too bad of a hike. It's probably like in the ballpark of like 500 feet a gain in a few miles, depending how far up you want to go. But yeah, kind of just a plethora of waterfalls in that whole area. And I'm sure there's ones that probably people have never seen in some of those drainages and places unless you're bushwhacking and stuff.
Yeah. And I think that the other one that comes to mind for me is similar to Appalachia. If you go up within the Great Gulf Trailhead from even the lower portion of the Great Gulf, there's a ton of awesome swimming holes. There's not a lot of waterfalls. There's some, but as you once you cross the West Branch and you get into the Great Gulf proper, and you go along the Great Gulf Trail, there's a ton of like waterfalls and places you can just step out and do swimming, all the way up until you get to like Spalding Pond, like right below the Great Gulf head wall. There's just endless amounts of these little waterfalls and drainages and places to check out. I don't know the names of any of them, but you could spend like a whole weekend just enjoying yourself along the rivers and the drainage without, topping out anywhere.
Yeah, I mean, I always like to tell people too, like it can be a bummer if you're up planning a hike for a weekend and it like pours the whole time or whatever. But if you're willing to get wet and you don't have like hypothermia concerns or something, like the temperatures in the 60s maybe or whatever, like go out and explore like not to take back to Crawford Notch, but go out and explore the notches, go out on the Kank or whatever. Like a lot of times after a big rainfall, like I've been out there and you can literally see like just random cascades falling down like the Willie Slide and stuff. Like it's really interesting checking out some of these spots after big rainfall events. And you'll see these cascades. Like even one time I was with Trokey doing the Hancocks after a really big night of rainfall, and we were at the Hairpin Turn parking area doing the Hancocks, and across the way on the backside of East Osceola, you could see like a cascade just falling off like East Osceola across in the distance, which was really neat, down some slide that Steve Smith was able to recall like the back of his hand, which was cool. But it was cool. But yeah, there's all these little places. So again, if it's a rainy day up in the mountains, like I just encourage you to like go check these places out. I think it's the best time to hit some of these. Or if it's a nice summer day and you want to cool off, go for it.
Yeah, and we'll link all the resources in the show notes for people to check out, and you can click on any one of these, the Visit the White Mountains page, the New England Waterfalls, or the New Hampshire Family Hikes. All have details on the waterfalls that we talked about here. And then if you want to check out episode 8, I think Stomp gave his take on some of the, I think he did a deep dive on some of the ones that me and you were less familiar with. So definitely we're checking that episode out as well. And I think that's going to do it, Nick, for New Hampshire waterfalls. We are blessed to have a bunch of waterfalls. And with all this talk of water, I got to go get a drink of water now. Yeah,
I think I have to go to the bathroom after all this talk of water. I think that's where it's led me. Okay. But and if you know of a cool waterfall that we didn't mention, share it with us. Let us know.
But only us, not the
only
public.
Us. Only us. Of course. That goes without saying, just us. Secret waterfalls.
All right. So that'll do it for So You Want to Hike New Hampshire Waterfalls, and we'll be back when we're back.
All right. Bye, everybody.
Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed the show, you can subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts. If you want to learn more about the topics covered on today's show, please check out the show notes and safety information on slasrpodcast.com. That's SLASR podcast.com. You can also follow the show on Facebook and Instagram. We hope you'll join us next week for another great show. Until next time, on behalf of Mike and Stomp, get out there and crush some peaks.
Knock on